Hey, this is Mike from Run Testers, and in this video we're going to be giving you our multi-tester first run review of the New Balance SC Elite V4. Now before myself, Nick, Tom and Kieran get into that, we'll be giving you the lowdown, what's new, what's different from the Elite V3, and then we'll tell you whether this is a super shoe launching in 2024 that you should be very excited about. So here's your lowdown on the New Balance SuperComp Elite V4, or SC Elite V4 as we'll call it in this video. It's priced at £260 in the UK or $250 in the US, so that's a jump up in price on the Elite V3, which is priced at £220 or $230 in the US currently. Our UK size 8 came in at 225 grams, up from 210 grams on the same sized V3. So there is a little jump up in weight here to expect. The drop sticks to 4mm and according to New Balance offers the same stack height figures as the V3. So that's 40mm at the heel and 36mm at the forefoot. In the upper department, New Balance has swapped its booty style knit for a mesh upper, and below that sits a full PIBA based FuelCell midsole with a lighter version of New Balance's Energy Arc carbon plate. That's a curvy one to deliver those energy returns. Below is a reworked outsole that does see a boost in overall rubber usage, with more coverage at the heel and forefoot and on top of the Energy Arc carbon plates.
The fit for me in the SC Elite V4, I'm a size 8 in the UK, this is a size 8. I haven't had any issues with it. I found it to be pretty comfortable. What I would say about it is it is tricky to get a good fit in this shoe. I did feel like there's a little bit of slip initially when I put it on, so I had to play around with the laces quite a bit to get a good fit. There's probably less space before the big toe than I would normally have, but I definitely would stay to my size in this shoe. I've done 22k in it so far, and I found it's very comfortable. I've not had any rubbing or anything like that in it, but I do think it's a tricky shoe to get the fit quite right on. There's quite a lot of space in the forefoot for me around the sides of the foot, but the midfoot is actually quite narrow, so worth taking that into consideration. But I would stay to my size in this shoe.
So in terms of fit, I've got my V4 in a UK size 8. That's exactly the same size that I had the V3 in. Now, the V4, it's definitely I would say a more structured shoe in terms of the fit. I think, it doesn't hug like the V3 upper does, but I do think in general it's still, pretty similar in terms of my experience. I think, the space up front of the toes feels absolutely fine. I think the hold at the midfoot, good as well too. The only thing I've noticed on my first couple of runs is the lockdown at the heel, and I think, again, it looks like I might have to play around with the lacing and how it kind of sits, because I have found it a little bit loose just on one side and it's been on the right side on both of the runs. So that's something to be mindful here. But generally, I think in terms of the overall fit and whether I would go for the same size as before, the UK size 8 for me was fine. And I think if you're looking at this shoe and you use the Elite V3 as well too, I think you'd be fine going true to size based on my testing.
So fit of the shoe has been okay for me in my normal UK size. Got to be a bit careful with New Balance. Sometimes they do come a bit short. It's partly because they go for a UK 9 to US 9.5 in New Balance. Sometimes it's a US 10, so they can feel cramped, but sometimes they're just really small fitting. Things like the original Rebel was a very tight shoe like that. This isn't the case with this shoe. I think it's okay in a normal sizing. It's slightly snug for me, but like I say, that's probably because of the way it converts from UK to US sizes, and I had enough room today on the run. I didn't feel like it was cramping me at all. The heel felt a bit loose when I put it on, and I was walking around the house and I wasn't entirely sure. I wasn't a bit worried about rubbing, so I did heel lock the shoes from the off, and I had no problems at all on the run. So yeah, if there is a problem there, I think heel locking will probably deal with it, but I was a bit worried about it, so I did do that before I headed out on the run today.
Fit then, and after the first 7-mile run I thought I would recommend going true to size in these shoes. Yes, they're very snug, yes they come up a bit short, but I had really good hold across the midfoot there, and they just had like a race fit was how I felt. I've just come in literally about 2 minutes ago from an 11.5-mile run, which is about 90 minutes long, a bit slower. And actually over that sort of time on feet, they're definitely coming up a bit too short. And I've changed my mind actually. I think I would recommend going half a size up in these. Particularly my toes, I felt at the end was butting along. It's something that I felt in the trail version of the Elite as well for New Balance, just a little bit short. So I don't know whether their lasts are coming up short, but if you don't want any of that toenail bashing at the end over a long distance, over a marathon, I think you're gonna have to go half a size up in these shoes. At least I think I will, to avoid that. Otherwise, I think the hold and the hugging's really nice. The only other problem I had was in the heel collars, but I'm going to talk more about that in a second.
So I've actually done 2 runs in the SC Elite V4 so far. The first one was a 10k tempo run, and that was at about 4-minute 40 kilometers. And I also raced in it today. I did the New Haven 10k in it, and that was at about 3-minute 50 kilometers, which is my race pace. The biggest thing I would say about the shoe is it is a big change from the SC Elite V3. The SC Elite V3 was fine. It just didn't feel to me like a lot of the super shoes that have been out for the last couple of years. It didn't have a lot of propulsion. It didn't have a lot of bounce, and that midsole just felt a little bit more like a daily training for me than a super shoe, especially in comparison with things like the Alpha Fly and the Vaporflies and things like that. The SC Elite V4 has a much better midsole. It is now what I would class as a super shoe feeling midsole. But what I would say is that it isn't noticeably bouncy or propulsive midsole. For me, it's actually similar to something like the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3. I don't like it as much as the Endorphin Pro 3, as you probably imagine if you watch this channel, but it's a very similar feel. It's quite a subtle feeling midsole foam, so it doesn't feel aggressive. It doesn't feel like it's really moving your foot forward. It doesn't feel that bouncy, but it is definitely a lot softer than the SC Elite V3. It feels like a super shoe, and it's definitely a shoe I think would really come into its own over long distances for like marathons and things like that. The 10k I raced in it today, I actually got a pretty close time to my PB. So today I got about 39:20, but it was really windy. So I think if I was racing on the flat in nice conditions, I probably would be pretty close to my 38-minute PB. So I felt that it was absolutely fine for that. It felt fast. I didn't really worry about it on my feet too much. A little bit like the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3. One of the reasons I like that shoe is because it feels natural. It's not very aggressive, and it just is really, really good for long distances where you just need something comfortable, soft enough to help your legs feel less tired throughout the run, but also has a little bit of bounce in it. This is similar. I definitely think over a marathon distance, I think this would be a good shoe from those 2 runs I've done so far. Shorter distances, I think it's fine, but I think there's better shoes out there. It just doesn't have that pop for me. It feels a little bit heavier on the feet than some of the super shoes that I would prefer to use for shorter distances. But all in all, I did enjoy those first couple of runs in this. It definitely felt on that tempo run that I could maintain that pace really easily, and I wasn't aiming to go for that pace. I just picked up the pace a bit more because I felt good in this shoe. It felt like I could run fast in it, and it felt very comfortable. It's one of those shoes that you don't really notice on the foot, which is quite nice. It's accessible for people. It's not aggressive in a way that some people might not like super shoes, so I think that's a good plus point for it. And I will also say that the upper is quite nice and breathable for me. No issues with the upper at all. As I mentioned, I did have a bit of problem getting a nice lockdown fit, but once I'd got that, it was fine. The one bit I don't like is the tongue structure of it. It is basically just a little flap of like felt or something, and it's really hard to sort of get it into position. Obviously that's designed to minimize weight, but I would have preferred something a little bit more structured on there to make it easier to get a nice comfortable fit. Outsole is absolutely great. If you watch the channel, you know that I tend to destroy the outsole of most super shoes. Pretty much the majority of the super shoes that I've tested over the last year, I've ripped the outer piece of rubber off of the back of those shoes. This seems absolutely fine, not had any issues at all. There is a bit of rubbing for me because I tend to rub that side of my foot when I'm running, but no issues at all on the outsole, and I think the front is really good as well. It's got a nice level of grip. It was quite wet and a little bit slippy today on that 10k race. A lot of turns, felt good for that, felt pretty stable when turning those corners. So all in all, I am impressed by this shoe so far. I think it's definitely getting there for a top tier super shoe at the moment, and I'm definitely going to enjoy picking this up more, which I can't say about the SC Elite V3.
Okay, so into that first run. I've actually done a couple of runs in the Elite V4 now. My first run was my kind of midweek club run, and that was kind of pace-wise, kind of 8-minute mile pace, dropping below that as well at points as well too. I have to say, I was a little bit underwhelmed by the Elite V4, and I'm trying to get a sense of maybe why that was. I think maybe I was a little bit tired, my legs were a little bit tired, maybe I wasn't just kind of feeling it on that run. But I think mainly I just didn't feel the excitement in it. And the main thing for me is when I was falling back on this hill it just felt a bit soft. I didn't feel like I was getting any real energy out of this shoe. Maybe it's because of the paces I was running, maybe because my legs were just a little bit tighter. I just really wasn't feeling it. And I don't know, it felt fine, it just didn't kind of blow me away. But then a few days later, I did my second run. That was closer to my marathon pace, or my marathon pace at the moment. So kind of 30-minute mile pace, dropping just below that, kind of 7:20, and kind of dropping below that a little bit as well to go a little bit quicker in it. Then I felt like I was getting what I expected to get from this shoe in the first run. There's that bounce there, there's that excitable ride in there. And when I was dropping back on my hill, I felt like I was getting something back from it at those quicker paces. And it makes sense because I'm running quicker, at my quickest pace at the moment. And that's where I felt that I was finally getting the most out of what I expected to get out of this shoe. It kind of reminds me a little bit of my time in the Rocket X2. I think things like the Cloudboom Echo 3. I think you look at the Cloudboom Echo 3, it's obviously a little bit firmer, but I think, once you hit those quicker paces and you engage that shoe a little bit more on what it's capable of, it feels great to run in. I think it's the same thing with the Rocket X2, and I would say it's a little bit like this with the New Balance Elite V4. Now, the Elite V3, a very good shoe. I always kind of felt it was more of a quick daily trainer shoe that could also work for racing as well too, but it just lacked that little bit of magic for me in terms of what I found. You're getting that bounce, but I think you're also getting that protection. I think you're getting that comfort as well too. I think the upper in general does work a little bit better for me. Now, it is a little bit heavier, and I think that's a little bit disappointing to see, and I think that's mainly coming from getting a bit more rubber on the outsole here, which you can clearly see when you kind of compare it to Elite V3. But ultimately, it's not a weight that has felt like an issue for me. I do wish it was a little bit lighter, and you compare it to the other super shoes, it is going to be a bit heavier, but I think overall in the grand scheme of things, I think it's going to be fine, particularly if you're looking at it from a long distance kind of marathon shoe. But I've done kind of an hour in it. I've done kind of 7 miles in it at my marathon pace. That second run, I felt a little bit better. My legs felt a little bit better, and I was running at my quicker pace. This shoe felt a lot better to run it in. I mentioned the outsole, and I think to say there's definitely a lot more rubber here compared to the Elite V3. And I think outsole wise, great on the Elite V3. I think it's going to feel solid again on the V4. Like for me, I was out kind of pavements, roads, it's dry conditions, cold conditions, but absolutely fine. Cornering was fine as well. I found it relatively stable for me as well too overall. So from that point of view, you compare it to some of the other kind of super shoes. For me, it feels a lot more stable in comparison to some of those shoes. So yeah, I think first run, a little bit underwhelmed. I think I maybe put that down to my own kind of, just being tired and it probably not running at my quickest pace where I think you're going to reap the benefits of the shoe. Second run, much improved in terms of experience. A nice bounce. I think you get energy there as well. I think there's good protection that's there as well too. And the outsole feels strong and grippy. It looks like it's going to give a lot of life. I'm not seeing any wear. As I said, I've done, a couple of runs in it. No major concerns in terms of that side of things. But yeah, as I said, this feels more like it. More of what I was hoping to see from the Elite V3. This feels like a little bit more of a step up in terms of being a kind of top tier racing shoe. But I still think you could probably use for training runs as well too. Those kind of longer kind of marathon pace, quicker pace kind of training runs as well too. So yeah, after my first couple of runs, didn't love it the first time. Second time, definitely massively improved in terms of experience. I feel like as I get into my initial verdict, there's a lot more to look forward to in this shoe from a kind of marathon point of view, a racing point of view compared to the V3.
I'm just heading off to do my first run in the New Balance FuelCell SuperComp Elite V4, whatever, something like that, SC Elite V4. Got my long run on the plan today. It's a Sunday here, so I'm going to be doing 90 minutes, just kind of how I feel. The plan is to start a bit easy, do a loop I know, it's about 8.7k at like a steady pace to test out the shoes with some faster running, and then just round up to the 90 minutes, just see how they feel really. But yeah, mostly it'll be fairly relaxed today, but yeah, good extended pickup in the middle there to test them at speed. So first run all done. That was pretty good. I am not sure how much I learned today. I wasn't entirely blown away, but I was quite tired today. So on the 8.5k odd push, hey, I felt pretty good. I was clipping along quite nicely around 337, 338 for that section on average, and it was pretty windy first half, and then with the wind second half. Not quite so much with the wind, the way that loop works, unfortunately. The shoe feels bouncy more than anything, I'd say. It's one of those super shoes that's really all about bounce, things like the Alphafly 2, and maybe actually even the RC Elite 2 a little bit more than the RC Elite 3, which is more rockered. It doesn't feel so tippy forward and aggressive, so that's quite noticeable when you're into the wind. You know, you've got to work quite hard to get in the right position to really engage that bounce. Then when you're running with the wind, you really feel like you're flying, because you get a big amount of bounce, big long stride, it feels really good, very easy to pick up the pace. And then after that, I just ticked through another 12k or so, moderate pace, and yeah, felt good for that. So certainly works, certainly is a super shoe. You're certainly getting that efficiency benefit, the bounce, propulsion, but it's not one of the really aggressive tippy ones. It feels more like a bigger one, a more bouncy one. I think something like the Adios Pro 3 reminds me of a little bit as well, but I think the Adios Pro 3 probably has a slightly firmer, more I'd say direct aggressive ride. It's really soft, this foam on this. It felt very soft to me at the start of the run, and actually even when running quite hard you get a lot of sink in, so you get a good amount of bounce back as well, but it's not quite that same tip forward feeling. So yeah, good first run out in them. Certainly want to do some more. Like I say, end of a long week, and I did race yesterday, so I'm not entirely convinced by my own impressions of the shoe as yet. I'd like to do a lot more on them and get some more insights, but solid run, decent fast section, good super shoe all round, but it doesn't feel like a drastic improvement on what we've seen before from New Balance. But I did like the SE Elite V3 a lot. I know some people didn't. I thought it was a really good shoe, so this feels like a really good shoe as well, and I'll do some more testing and see how it goes.
So for my run test then, for this first run, I've done 2 runs. I did a 7 mile with 5 miles at steady pace, 7-minute miles. I think, my marathon pace would be somewhere around like 6:20s or 6:30s at the moment, so that gives you an idea of where I'm hitting. And then today I went out and did 11.5 miles at 8.5-minute mile pace, so it took me about 90 minutes, a bit slower. I did have some sort of faster sections in that as well. And overall, I think the ride of this is nice. It's kind of lively, and it's a totally different ride to the old FuelCell SC Elite. And yeah, a lot has changed here, and I think it's changed for the better. There's really nice roll through from the rock ring. I think the foam sinks and responds really nicely. There's good response here. There's good punch, good energy. They're lively. I think they're exciting. I had a lot of fun running in them. The minute you put them on, they've got that super shoe feel. Like, you can feel that kind of push forward. And they had that. For me, these definitely moved towards the kind of Adios Pro end of things. That's how they felt to me on those first miles, particularly when I was going fast. They gave me plenty back when I was trying to sort of hit those 7-minute miles, kept my heart rate nice and low. The one problem that I've had though is this. That in there is not the colorway of the shoe, that's blood. And you've got these heel collars that are quite thin and they're quite high and they curve in a little bit. And what's happened here, they're not very flexible. So if you go to the Adios Pro, the Adios Pro collars sort of fold over and the top of them are a bit flexible. But because this is curving in, it's quite thin, it's all quite pointed. That has basically just cut a massive hole in my heel. It did it yesterday. I thought maybe it's just a one-off, so I put a plaster on today, sort of fixed it, patted it out, changed my socks, went out again today, and did 11 miles. I could feel it from the start, and when I've got back, it's really sort of much worse. My heel is in a big mess. So that's a big problem here for me at the moment. I don't know whether that will change if I go half a size up. I don't think so, because it's just the way the heels hold. It's not really to do with too much movement in the foot. It's just this top bit. My heel isn't really sliding up and down. It's just curving in and digging in at the base of my Achilles there. So that is a bit of a problem, which is a bit disappointing, because otherwise I've really enjoyed running in these shoes. When it comes to ride, I think New Balance have got themselves a shoe here that is it's basically their best carbon racer to date, I would say. It's much more in line with the other ones we've come to expect, the Vaporfly 3s. I haven't tried the new Alphaflies, but it's up there with the Adios Pro. It's more lively than things like the Under Armour Elite First Version or the Saucony Endorphin Elite. There's lots going on here and feel nice and light and energetic, and I've really enjoyed them. But that is somewhat going to ruin it for me.
Yeah, solid first run in the shoe today there. Like I said, I want to go and do some fast sessions when I'm feeling a bit fresher, and maybe racing them when I'm feeling a bit fresher and see how they feel then. But yeah, it feels like a good shoe. It feels like a shoe in the category of the slightly bigger, bouncier, cruisier carbon shoes rather than the more aggressive tip forward shoes. I feel like potentially the problem we'll have here is that there are now shoes I think that are doing a really good combination of both those things. Things like the Alphafly 3, which has a lot of bounce and propulsion, but tips you forward a lot as well in an aggressive way, and is a fair bit lighter than these shoes. So the weight gain here maybe feels like it's a bit more as a marathon focused shoe, obviously with the SC Pacer 2 to come as well with a slightly lower stack. That'll be interesting, because I feel like this foam might work really well with a slightly lower stack, because it is very soft and springy, and maybe you could reduce it a bit, reduce the weight, and get a similar level of bounce but in a slightly more aggressive ride. That'll be interesting. But like I say, it was a long run today on fairly tired legs. I'm certainly keen to do some more testing, but pretty solid run here. It's a good super shoe this, but I want to see some more from it if I'm going to be convinced that it's one that blows the competition away or goes right up against things like the Alphafly.
So some initial thoughts on the New Balance SC Elite V4. Now, after the first run, I was a little bit concerned about this shoe. The second run, that definitely changed. And what I would say is, now the Elite V3 for me is a fantastic shoe, and I've enjoyed running it post testing. I think what it was for me, if I looked at that and somebody said to me, I've got to run a marathon in a shoe, would that be the shoe that I would pick over the other options? Probably not. Now, it's very early days in testing. I haven't gone marathon distance in this. I haven't gone and done a longer distance run in this and spent a couple of hours on my feet in this shoe. So it's hard to say, but what I'm seeing is a shoe that feels like a better alternative to the other kind of marathon super shoes that are out there. And I think that's the key thing for me. The changes here on the whole feel like a step in the right direction for New Balance. I think the upper, barring the kind of heel lockdown stuff that I've seen so far, I think are positives. I think the midsole changes are positives as well too. The outsole feels great like it did on the V3. The only thing for me, the slight thing for me, other than the kind of lockdown, is the pickup in weight, where I think the trend from other shoes has been to go lighter. And I feel like, while it hasn't felt like a heavy shoe at the moment, whether that feeling still feels good over the longer distance, that's the key thing for me. But I think when you look at the price, it feels like a better match at the moment for those other super shoes that are built for those longer distances. So on the whole, as I said, that positive experience so far. I want to see how it handles those longer distances. It is a shoe that I am planning to use for the London Marathon. So on those longer training runs that I'm going to be doing very, very soon, this is where I'm hoping this shoe will really excel. But so far, so good, particularly on that second run that I've done with it. As I said, I feel the changes are positive ones on the whole with the New Balance SC Elite V4. Elite V3, very good shoe. This feels, at the moment, it has the ingredients to be a super kind of shoe over that marathon distance. I'm seeing something a lot more, exciting for me compared to the Elite V3, which is a good shoe, but I think this feels like a step up in terms of that experience, and I'm definitely looking forward to spending a bit more time in this shoe.
So my verdict on the New Balance SC Elite V4, I think it is a very big improvement on the SC Elite V3. I think it is now a shoe that feels like it can almost compete with things like the Alphafly and the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3. And I think that it is now a lot more accessible for people. So if you are somebody who's looking for a super shoe and you've maybe not tried one before and you want something that's maybe a little bit more veering towards the daily shoe feel, but has those super shoe benefits from it, I think this is a good option now. I definitely think a lot of people could pick up this shoe and find it quite a nice, comfortable, enjoyable shoe to run in without feeling too aggressive or just not getting used to the feel that you have from some super shoes. I would still say that if there was a top 10 of super shoes, which we probably will do this year, that it's not high on the list for me. I think it's probably sitting around like the 6 or 7 mark for me. I think there's a lot of better shoes out there for when it comes to super shoes. Things like the Alphaflys, things like the Vapeflies, and for me the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3, which I would class it as the direct competitor for this shoe when it comes to what it's trying to deliver. I just think the Endorphin Pro 3 just has a little bit more to it. I think the foam's just a little bit more energetic. I think it just... It's subtle, but it still propels you forward a little bit more. So I would still go for that shoe over this one. But I think it's very close now. I think this is really a big move for New Balance, and I'm impressed with it so far.
Verdict then, and after 2 very different runs in this, and 18 miles in total over 2 days, I think the New Balance FuelCell Elite V4 is a good shoe. It's a really good shoe. I really enjoyed running it. It's lively. Overall, I kind of love the way it feels on the foot. I love the ride of it. It's nice and snappy. It's nice and rolly. There's lots of bounce. There's lots of energy. I think, there's also a decent amount of protection as well when I was sort of running a bit slower today. And I think it's sort of taken a big step on compared to the other FuelCell Elites that ran a little bit more sort of traditional. They were not in that kind of punchy end of carbon race shoes. And this moves it a bit more towards those shoes like the Adios Pro, as I said earlier. big problem for me, these heel collars. If that could be fixed for going half a size up, I think New Balance have got a potential winner on their hands. I think I'm going to see if I can get hold of some more half a size up and see if that works. If you don't have that heel collar problem, I think you can have a winning carbon shoe on your hands here. But whether that's going to happen to you or not, I don't know. It might just be me, the way my feet work, or the way my kind of heels are sort of shaped and all that kind of stuff. But overall, for those first miles, it's been like a 95% thumbs up, but the 5% is a really big problem. But if you can get on with these shoes, I think a lot of people are going to like them.
Okay, so there you have it, some multi-test initial thoughts on the New Balance SC Elite V4. Now, if you've got any questions about the shoe in the meantime, do let us know in the comments. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos, and yeah, we'll see you for the next Run Testers video.